to Antarctica, and we do because I love it.
Me too. Yeah, and I've seen it in the news again.
Had a big jump on us.
Right.
Big jump. All right,
right.
Let's go.
Russia talks about Antarctica a lot. That's how I know that it's really important.
Well, Russia has a big part of it. If you look at how that's divided, they got a big part of Antarctica. And by the way, guys, it's not just what's there, it's where it goes and what it leads. That's a bigger thing with Antarctica that people don't talk about.
But we'll get into that. But today we have a mission.
We do. All right. I want to talk about this just briefly. Because this is a more recent article that came through. This part of the article is older, but some of the information on this is engineering nanoparticles and nanotechnology, right? So the reason I want to mention this really quickly is this organization here, you see I highlighted this, to facilitate realization and clinical translation, promising nano-embedded technologies, enabled technologies. Now, what's important about that is what this research does and what it leads to. So I'm going to do a quick jump, okay? All right. A couple highlights of where they've gone and what's going on with this. So nanotechnology and nanoparticles. This is some of the new combination therapies that's currently ongoing, Mel.
Okay.
Alter multiple pathways, maximizing the therapeutic efficacy against specific macro molecules. I know that's a big word. Let me sum it up in a minute here. Target particular phases of the cell cycle, right? Overcome mechanisms of drug resistance. Now, what all that does is that's basically ways of getting a drug delivery system or nanotechnology or something else, and what you're doing is overriding your body's immune system, overriding particles, overriding messenger RNA. There's a lot of things that can be done with this. And when you start seeing articles on it now, it means that it's already been done. So I said, hey, you know what? How many current nanoparticle, nanotechnology clinical studies are ongoing right now, just generally, right?
Right.
There's 585 currently right now. That's just right now.
And that's what we know about.
Yeah. And the other thing is
that's in America.
That's what's ongoing. That does not list what's already complete.
Right.
Right. So,
and is that only that's only in America, right?
No.
That's worldwide. Wow.
The database see, you can't just go US, because the reason you can't go just US is many companies are pharma companies.
Multinational, right?
Everywhere. Right. A lot of companies in Japan, Asia,
China,
Canada,
Germany.
Germany. Right. So, as you start to circle that globe, you have to have a centralized area for these. But this is just what I found just on one of those, hey, Mike thoughts where I'm going to look into something.
Right.
And this was it. But I want to show you one more thing because we're going to go into it later.
Okay.
All right. And then we're going to get into the fun stuff. You're going to look at my lab.
Well, everyone can make their own lab the way you made a lab now, because you're such a good teacher.
You can, guys.
Oh, no, here's what I'm upset about. I'm really digging into this. I thought because when I first got the information about the IVF and baby making farming in Ukraine, which we know was already happening through Epstein and John of God, Oprah's pal, and then, all over the world, certainly in China. It's really disturbing because what I learned this week, watching some of the stuff about Nygaard and others on his level, is that they are using aborted fetuses and umbilical cords for this longevity, this extension of life research that all these billionaires are doing, that the transhumanists and all that, and then also these if you speak to some people, these babies, these whatever they are, they're made in labs through science. They're not coming with like a mother and a father and a soul and love and all that. This is scary because we don't know. I'm excited you're going to talk about this because people don't even realize what's going on, and it is really gigantic. And I was talking to Stella, and she was saying to me, like, these people don't have souls. I mean, like, they're a different species. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, you went there. So let's talk about that for a minute. You started it. All right, Rob, she started.
It's okay.
But you have to look at there's when you look at what you're talking about, there's many different categories. You're talking about gene harvesting or gene production. There's
Right.
also what they call cloning, where they'll create a clone from an individual. Now, I'm not going to go into detail now because I don't want to blow my lab up, but when you start talking about cloning and you start talking about taking cells and culture them
Right.
and developing them, the technology is way over. I just got this as kind of a starting zone for some of the newer viewers, some of the people that have listened to us for a while. I've talked about cloning before, but then there's different types of cloning. And then there's actually, because I was working on this now, actually I was just working on this.
Oh, wow.
You've got augmented hybrids and hybrids themselves, which are two different things. And then you're talking about gene editing at the cellular level, putting it into a womb, and then doing genetic modifications and gene doping, where you can make somebody stronger, you can make them smarter. There's different ways that you can modify this. So when you're talking about hybrids,
Yeah,
there's hundreds of them.
I know.
They've got thousands in the world right now.
That's what Stella was saying. But also, I have to tell you, China is bragging about this. This is what I'm saying. Like you were saying to me before, also about Russia as well, because Russia is way more advanced than our military or our government or our media is telling us when it comes to weapons and technology than anyone knows or thinks. But again, in foreign countries, they are talking about this, especially China, that they are creating super soldiers and advanced children that are changing in the womb. But a lot of it also is that they're implanting it's sad to say the Uyghurs, but there are actually these camps of people and they're using people in jail all over the world too, that they're creating them in artificial wombs, but also implanting them into real wombs that are totally genetically modified. And then they become a fetus. And then what?
Yeah, because just cloning somebody actually has shown that it's not cost effective and they don't work. There's a lot of things wrong with them, but which we talked about, right?
Well, there's a huge business for cloning your dead animals. I know that. I know a woman in Palm Beach, but then I wonder if the animal that she got really was a clone of her animal, if it's a business. I don't know.
That, that's a whole thing, because now you're talking about DNA frequency, right? And the differences between a genetic clone and, for example, your soul.
Right.
And that gets into, that's a whole other area that we got to get into, because, by the way, I did mention to you that I actually saw a cloning lab this week.
I know.
And the reason this topic is up is because I wanted to show you something.
Well, tell people. I'm being quiet again. Sorry, folks. I know you like to hear Michael.
Okay. That's what we do best. So I know people complain.
It's not. They know that I don't like it too. The trolls. So they know that's me. It's okay.
Emails on Mel. This is a pet peeve. I gotta say this. Sometimes people send me emails saying, "Mike, you mispronounced this word."
All our work doesn't matter.
Let me tell you. First, my brain runs so fast, my mouth never catches up. If you know me in person, this is the way I am all the time, right? So if I mispronounce a word, guys, sometimes I'm jumping so far ahead. I do, so I apologize.
No, okay? Whatever. Let's just go on. But you and I know that this is how we talk in real life.
We're crazy.
What are we gonna do?
So watch this, guys. So artificial womb technology is very advanced. And the reason I want to talk about this is it talks about, there's already articles out there. This was 2017, but look at what was happening. There's ongoing conversations about this since 2017 about human reproduction. More specifically, in this particular article, is artificial gestation of human beings could come by accident. Hell no, it's not by accident. It's by development. But the other thing is, others argue that ectogenesis is already a partial reality. Basically, what they're saying is, hey, by the way, we could be creating these things by accident, but then the other person saying, oh yeah, well, we probably already are. But my point is that this research is way more advanced than we thought. And I started looking into this. I already knew about the cloning and some of the other things, but I and you asked me this, how? Well, now we have one of the pathways on how, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go into this in depth later. But by the way, this matches what we're going to be talking about also. Everything that we've been talking about, which is so exciting for the last some years now, it's all coming together. It's all coming together. Frequency, energy, it's all related. But now we're going to put science on its butt in a minute.
Yeah.
And like, don't you? We got time. So I'm going to do it.
We have time. You know, and I was saying to you earlier that a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about, and she was surprised about it too. Amazing Polly is one of the best people out there. She's somebody I actually watch every show she does. And she found a lot of the same stuff about the like the baby making situation and using this umbilical cords and all that for, like, you know, these guys, the Davos crew, they're obsessed with eternal life. And like this Nygaard case coming up, if Epstein had ever gone to trial, it would have come out all of his science, crazy science too, this Frankenstein type science. But that is what they're doing. And this cloning that people think is a myth is a part of it. But so is these baby making factories and IVF farms that they're finding all over. And people need to know that this is real. And, you know, there's a big thing about, you know, God and natural law and playing God, that is if you believe in God, as I do, that this is all very dangerous in my mind.
It is very dangerous. And, you know, again, it goes back to when you have the technology, what do you use it for? Here's a perfect example where a mouse embryo has been grown in an artificial womb. So we know they're doing it. And we're going to go into detail on this. I've been doing research on this for quite some time. I've been in the lab, and I'm actually getting back into the lab a little bit more as of recently. So let me show you something real quick. By the way, this is one of my notes as I go through. So I will spend you'll get 25 pages of notes, and then I break it down. So when you see one PowerPoint presentation, it's hours of research, right? So anybody is a graphic designer that can help us with this, you would say, bless you. By the way.
Thank you.
God bless
I sneezed on the truth. Yeah, we're looking for collaborators here. And we're not looking
for somebody that can take my notes and make them look better than this. But this is actually something that's very profound. So
we only know what we know. And the good thing for anyone out there that is looking at this, and even if you haven't done it in 20 years, like my dad was a chemical engineer in college, like he's 83. But some of this stuff he really gets, and it motivates him. So if you're watching any of this and you didn't see this, but this is sparking something, take a picture of the screen and then blow it up and add to it and let us know. Because we don't know what we don't know, but we do as much as we can to find as much as we can. But there's so many people that watch us that are, you know, smarter than we are. Maybe not Michael, but definitely smarter than me.
If somebody is a graphics designer and wants to take my sketches and make them nicer for me, God, email me, please. But this is
I like your clandestine drawings.
Thank you. So this is an important one, actually, because this is actually here. But what this is you're talking about third, fourth, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 dimension. Okay. But what does that mean? But what is now starting to come in all science, life's understanding, everything goes into these different phases from second dimension, third dimension, fourth dimension, and fifth dimension. And as I started to look into this, and we talked about this a little bit, and we're going to go into my experiment in a moment, but as you change into your next, it's a fluid shift. So everything's fluid. So you don't go from 2 to 3, not like stepping stones. It's a transition, like going down a river, right? Mm-hmm. So as you go 2, 3, 4, 5, things change. You change in dimension also means change in definition, change in tech, and change in understanding. So as you go through these different levels, your understanding, your knowledge also goes with it proportionally, right? So you always hear me say, you need to always ask better questions. Better questions lead you to better answers, and it gets you farther along. So the reason I bring this up here is as you look at these different ones, and here's my little hand scratch notes here. So third dimensional shift, as you go from a 2 into a 3, now we're going into 4, into the quantum level. Let's look at 3 just for a moment, all right? You're talking about the physical sciences, and our physical science and understanding now we know is wrong, right? So what we did in terms of medicine, for example, is you have cancer, cut the organ. right? Cut it out or throw a ton of drugs. Let's
Right, exactly.
nuclear. But at the time in our understanding, let's take all the bad guys out and what they know. Let's look at where we are. Okay, at the time in our level of understanding that's what we thought was correct. But now, as you start to look into this fourth dimension, where you're talking about quantum level understanding, I want to use the word understanding here. What you're seeing now is, for example, as you're shifting from 3 to 4, if you look at the top here, I'm talking about magnetic field therapy. This is big. When you look at clinical research over the last decade, this was called pseudoscience, a lot of this, right? But all of a sudden now we're warping at warp level into that one, which is ultimately going to get us into medbed technology in advance. Okay, growing an organ for somebody. So, okay, or understanding how to fix something rather than cut. And we learn to manipulate it properly or create it into better harmony. This is a really important diagram. And all of my understanding, which we're going to see in a minute, you start here and you move forward. Okay, so is that you could? I'm going to pause for a minute. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm trying to read. I took a picture of the screen to send to my dad.
Okay, so
because he could probably spend hours trying to figure.
This is all right. So listen, I'm going to show you what these are here because when you see the triangle means change. Okay, in the scientific community or in the scientific community, a triangle means change. So when you see the triangle here, it's change in dimension, change in definition, change in tech, and what you don't see here is the other important one is change in understanding. Okay?
And ethics. How about ethics?
Well, this is
that's pure science.
Initially, I would say no, but yes, because all of it changes. So now now you're looking at early 3, we're talking about messenger RNA technology, right? Physical sciences, change in dimension, change in definition, change in tech, change in understanding, magnetic field energy, right? Now we're going into what we call quantum level understanding, where it's change in physics, but also more importantly, is also this change in consciousness shift, right?
Yeah.
So this is important. This is really important.
And what does that come from? From transparency, disclosure, education, all of the above? Because if we're talking about an echo chamber, that's one thing, but a consciousness shift also means getting out of what you believe to be facts and truth to what might be out there that you don't know. And that's just what I'm thinking.
No, you're right. Okay, so in a vacuum, okay, in science, and we're going to talk about vacuums in a moment here, but in an ideal world, in Mike's world, where all the scientists are good, and in Mao's world, where everybody is transparent and everybody's understanding, we're about a century behind in terms of advancement. Right. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. But what happens is, in a perfect world, and we're all an understanding, we should have gone from a 2 into our third dimension right into 4 or 5 much quicker.
Right.
But we didn't, because this change in definitions or understanding was wrong. And it's not that we were wrong, it's we weren't told.
Right.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. Now, in a perfect world, this would have gone longer. I talk about timelines all the time. They're extremely important, and we're going to go into them more because of some of the lost cities that are recently found.
Yeah, a lot of them. People don't even know that. And also those, you know how you found all those formations all over that have something to do with energy, and they're like circular, and you could see them if you knew that they were there. I saw another thing. I think somebody's watching our show that I follow on, but this guy's writes a lot about Ukraine and Russia and stuff. It's a foreign guy, but I saw something on his blog about these ancient discoveries that are being made. But here's the problem: the overlords the puppet masters that are hoarding this technology, they're also hoarding that. They don't want anyone to know about any of that stuff either. So apparently a lot of those that you've pointed out here, the pyramids all over the world, not just in Egypt, but and all of these formations and these like societies that are being, these old civilizations being dug up, that they then immediately become you can't
Done.
you can't
No.
go there. They become like property of the state or, whatever. They just you can't go. It's all
Because
over the
it's all
world.
related. This is what all, sometimes
What
when we
jerks
walk
that they've been hiding all this technology from us, and then when somebody
Yeah.
finds it, they disappear them and then block off so nobody else can ever get to that land. They block the
Yeah.
land.
It's all related, and a mud flood, time shifts, everything. It's all related.
Yeah,
And
it's
this,
amazing.
and I'm glad you asked that question about this, because in a perfect world, this is where it goes. What I did is this is just a quick thought that in my notes that led me to a different direction, because I do that. I have a
I know.
attention span of a squirrel. So let me show you something really quick, and I apologize, I can't get all of it.
Michael, the scientist.
All right, so let me show you what my objective was here. So I wanted to look at some of the experiments. And by the way, some of the medical technology, I actually buy and try out. I don't recommend anything because I've not found anything. And I had one prototype that there's been some complications. It was showing some amazing results. Actually, it healed my knee completely. But there's been some complications. I can't talk about it yet, but we will. So this is my little lab that I was doing. Now, let me tell you my objective here. Can we take coils and can we increase electrical current when we go through magnetic or torsion fields? Okay, that was the objective. So here's what I apologize.
Explain for 1 second for anyone that hasn't seen your show on torsion fields, what that is and why it matters.
Torsion fields and magnetic fields is everything when it comes to in a simple form. When you look at all the ancient scriptures, you look at all the old books, you look at all physics, it's a torsion fields are these magnetic fields that come through. And what we've learned is electricity is in direct proportion to these magnetic fields. There's a lot going on there. You look at anti-gravity, it has to do with these torsion and magnetic fields, electric current. And our understanding of it has been completely wrong.
Right.
And as a science, but more importantly, I'm going to loop this down to the medical changes that are coming. Okay. So here's what Mike did. So Mike has this lab. And so what I wanted to do is I've done a series of things. And so what you see here on the picture on the left, on the right here is I take 4 AA batteries. I increase the voltage I wanted to go from 5 to 110 volts. So I was looking at some of the old experiments, see if we can reproduce some of the old stuff first and foremost, right? So as I did do this, I was seeing that I could increase from 5 to 8 to 15 volts coming through on my voltmeter, okay? Then I ran it through a magnetic field. And the reason, there's actually 2. I can't get any closer because I've got some really strong magnets and it totally messes with your phone. So that's why these pictures aren't perfect. So what I did then is I said, well, what happens if I just run it through a simple magnetic field? I'm going to run through a positive and a negative, and I'm going to run it through because there's been some experiments, and I've shown you that if you take a polar magnet, a negative and a positive, and you spin it, but you take coils through there, you can create electricity. Right. Remember we talked about that. So I said, can we do it? And so then what I did here on the right is I said, well, wait a minute, these are coated. What if I uncoat them, and does it have any and it had no impact? Now, the objective here, guys, just so you know, is I want to create a small device that I can run my electric lawnmower on. Really, that's what I'm doing here. I want to say, hey, is this applicable in the real world?
If you can do that, then sky's the limit from there. Yeah.
Right. And I want to see what my
think you're going to do it.
I'm like, oh God, here comes Mike. What's he doing now?
No, it's great.
Right?
Who cares? But it's great. You just started over somewhere else, so they just think you're Mike. You're Mike, some kind of science guy. My dad was like that too. He was always in the garage.
One neighbor move already.
My dad was always doing crazy stuff in my garage too. I love it. I'm a big fan of the home scientists.
Oh my God! All right. So listen, I could not increase the voltage like I wanted. Frustrated. So then what I did is I said, well, let me go back and make sure that I understand this properly. Okay. So I said, let me take a step back. Let me look at what I'm doing. But there's a huge problem with that approach because I'm using the current laws of physics to try to understand what I'm trying to do, right? So I start pulling up Ohm's law of conservation of energy, Kirchhoff's first rule, Kirchhoff's second rule. And basically what that's saying is, I'm going to boil that down. You guys can look this up. You guys can argue with me if you don't. Well, you can't argue. It's a law.
Right.
It's not a Biden law. It's a law of physics, right? But basically what this is saying is you can't create more energy. Whatever you start with at the other end, you have to end up with, it all has to equal zero. Period. Right? So if I'm running on something, and then of course you have the inefficiency of a motor. Let's look at that just for a moment. I'm going to pause. So when you run a motor, you put gas in or electric, it's irrelevant, because what you have bearings and you have certain resistance to that energy. So for example, if you look at an output of a furnace, they always tell you 80% efficiency, 70% efficiency. Basically what that's saying is, hey, you're not at zero resistance. You have certain things that are resisting your energy and your output. That's why you're not at 100%. That's basically what we're fighting, right? Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Then it occurred to me. Let's go, going back to that little diagram. Well, wait a minute. I can't use the current laws of understanding. Where can I go to figure this out? So that's what I kind of jumped to, right? Mm-hmm. So then I realized something. We already have the answer. Right?
I have to tell you something. You know what I saw yesterday? So I was talking to somebody, I deal with these great people that do the satellite phones. If anyone wants one, you can go to my partner's page, but they're really, really brilliant over there. There's a real shortage in stuff. But what I've been learning, especially since Joe Biden is trying to push the Great World Economic Forum reset by transitioning us to technology that doesn't work or is not ready for prime time before it's ready. One thing I did learn is that a lot of the solar panels that people put up during the Obama regime, though nobody seems to remember that Solyndra and all those people went bankrupt, are already obsolete. And that a lot of these people are finding that they have to replace these. They weren't told this then, but that they have to replace their solar panels. And then there's parts that are no longer in existence. So then it's costing the people who went for it back in the beginning to be good people and good to the planet are finding that the solar energy has changed so much that all of their equipment that they bought, especially under the Obama years, is obsolete. But also that they're hiding technology for solar and energy that is much smaller. That like these panels are really, they're now like the size of coffee tables and they could be the size of laptops, but that they're not releasing that to the public. And then the other thing is that once these solar panels are no longer usable and the batteries that were for the old ones aren't being made, then the pollution from them is far worse than the benefit. I'm sorry, I'm just bringing that up because I just read about the solar panel stuff.
It's exponential. You're absolutely right. But I want to stress something. You don't need solar panels. It's not the answer. You don't need it. But this tells you that. Right. And so you're 100% correct. We know the windmills, what do they call those things? Yeah, windmills, right?
Yeah.
Now,
go ask the Europeans how that's working. It's funny. Putin made a speech yesterday and he said something about, everyone's starting to realize when there's no wind, it doesn't matter. Sure. A, and B, they're putting these windmills in salt water. So within 2 years, they have to be replaced. Right. And they all come from China. So 3 reasons. But apparently Biden's transitioning to that tomorrow. So let's get ready for that. But no, this is what I'm saying. You found this. And it's like all this stuff that they're trying to sell us. Actually, it's money laundering, in my opinion, and contracts and buying all this stuff. This stuff is all pretty much going to be obsolete. And it already is. And they know it because you know it.
It was obsolete 100 years ago. And I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to show you.
I know. I can't believe
We're going to cross this mountain right now. But I want to show you something about this. I showed this to you a while ago, but then
this makes more sense
to me.
Right.
This occurred to me. We know we've seen this before, but look at the distance that you're taking energy. You're putting it from point A to point B. You've got no wires, no nothing, right? And all the way up the other end of that mountain, that little speck, that's where it's going, right?
It could be in every town in America like this.
Yeah. Remember, and then I said, guys, look at this, remember this. And we had a little laugh. Remember? But then I went back and I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe my approach and my thought process, I know is flawed. So where do I begin? So I started doing my digging into this a little bit. All right. I went over and got reached out to a couple peers. I want to show you a couple things. I'm going to talk about Tesla a minute. I'm going to do it. I love the guy, but his work 100 years ago keeps coming back in the most recent stuff coming out. Okay. So his sphere capacitor. Now, there's something that's interesting that I want to point out about this. I didn't catch this the first time. I caught it this time, though. Sphere capacitor, there's a change in the charge value that is placed on a surface. It's two-dimensional density of energy, enclosed waves of density of time. All right? Now, that's going to become important because now as I come back, that gives this a whole different meaning. Okay? Better question. So I says, well, what does that mean? And how do they do it? And how does that affect, how is it linked to this? Well, it is, because I'm going to point out a couple of things real quick. So let's go back. Now, one of the hardest things for us to do is to look for Tesla stuff is it's all gone.
I know.
Right?
Well, it's hidden. It's not gone. It's somewhere.
There's 8 suitcases of his crap that's missing, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere. And a lot of people talk about Trump's connection to Tesla and stuff, but let me tell you something. There's also a lot of information about the CIA and other people, and a lot happened here. But you know what? As long as we keep digging.
Here's what I did. So here's what I did. I said, okay, so anything related to Tesla is going to be gone. Let me look at his students, but then also, let me follow his lectures.
Oh, good for you.
Okay. Because what happens is he would go somewhere and he would inspire somebody else. And I found stuff before this. Cool. So I said, let me come back into. So let's go back and look at a couple things here that Tesla did and what he inspired and what work he inspired later from around the world. So that's what I did. So kind of the geek Mike comes through. He's digging through all this stuff in here. But I want to point out a couple things here. He had a couple of articles. This 1932 article that he wrote about this gaseous body is a very important one. He talks about sound wave and energy within air, compression, expansion waves, longitudinal waves, right? And then he had the article that Tesla's article on September 11th, ironically, 9/11, but 1932. But in there, he wrote something that I passed over the first time, and I went back. So, a great mistake of modern science, the Hertz wave theory of wireless transmission may be kept up for a while, but I do not hesitate. By the way, I didn't misspell that. The article did, just so people know. To say that in a short time it would be recognized as one of the most remarkable and inexplicable aberrations of the scientific mind in modern history. And if you go through that a little bit farther, he talks about the differences between one-dimensional and two-dimensional energy. And longitudinal waves are generated by means of a changing energy density, electric charge density. This is really important. Completely missed this part the first time. And the reason I say that is the change that he created. By the way, he created oscillations in his chart. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But what's interesting is this inspired work around the world, everywhere, right?
Right.
So,
right. So there was a lot. It wasn't just Americans that wanted to grab this technology. It was worldwide.
No, and there was
poor guy probably had no idea how much danger he was in until it was like way past the point that he was in danger.
He was off the chart brilliant, but more importantly, he understood everything. And I think he had help too, but I also think that he read old literature that is no longer in existence as well. He was a student as well. Right. So I want to let's look at Alexander Chernetsky and some of his work, because it's extremely important. His work. I'm going to highlight a couple things. I'm going to go into a nerd dive for one.
Okay, great.
I'm going to do a nerd dive for like 10 minutes, and then I'll pull this back up. We'll get some air. Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, he's got a lot of brilliant work, and a lot of scientists have written white papers and tested his work. But I'm going to point two things out very quickly, and then we're going to do a deep dive. All right. Laboratory experiments have proven the possibility of using kinetic effect of self-generating discharge. That's a big, big word, and remember that. For accelerating bodies in space, he has calculated the parameters of self-generating discharge plasmatron that could serve as a propulsion engine unit of the future, replacing rocket engines. Powered by a minor 10-volt source. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go into that. And I said, well, what does that mean? And I'm going to show you. Because Mel would ask me. Go ahead, Mel, ask me. What does that mean, Mike?
Well, I'm waiting for you to tell me because, I
we're going to dive right into it. So anyway, he said we can take this and we can make this even larger, which completely is opposite. So wait a minute, you're taking an electrical charge and you're making it bigger. You can't do that. It has to be negative. You always have to be negative, not zero resistance, right? So for the self-generated discharge, the region of longitudinal wave is a radial component of the current. Charges are moving both axial direction between electrodes, and they're oscillating in a radial direction. That's really important. So I think that's what they're doing here. All right, so let's keep going.
Now, why aren't they, they're bringing us to all this technology that I'm reading is totally also already obsolete. The wind farms that they're bringing in from China, the Biden regime, the solar panels that all these people got under Obama, they don't have the parts anymore because they've moved so advanced. Why aren't they using, they're not using it because it doesn't make money, I guess. I guess it's a financial thing.
It's a big part of it. But what's interesting is
and are there companies in America manufacturing this stuff or not yet? Or we don't know?
Let me think on that for a minute. Okay. On how I'm going to answer that. There are, and if they are, they're very secret.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I figured.
Okay.
Yeah, because it endangers the entire energy industrial complex that is manipulating all of our lives daily.
If one of my peers, and I mentioned this to you, if one of my peers goes, if you go through 1 week and not one of my peers were reminded of an NDA, non-disclosure agreement that was in place, I'd be very, very surprised. But let's go further on this.
Okay,
I'm going to go into this a little bit more. By the way, when I'm done, this is going to end up in the medical community. That's what's so exciting, right? So let's go back here. This longitudinal electromagnetic wave is not accepted in the classical physics because, as we just talked about it, you cannot create sound waves or energy within the air. Well, duh, we know we can because first Tesla did it, and now there's several companies that are doing the same thing, right? So the old rules no longer apply. So we have to take what we know, throw it out the window, and move forward with an understanding that we're wrong. That's what I do with my experiments, right? I was really disappointed because I really thought after some of my experiments, I was going to put, capacitor in there. I was going to be able to run my lawnmower. Didn't work. But I want to point something out here, Rick, by the way. His work also was dedicated to the investigation of biological nature of the longitudinal electromagnetic wave. So he's saying these electromagnetic waves and these waves are biological as well, all inclusive. That's a key here. So I'm not condoning this next part here, but I got to read it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Small animals were killed, and just at the moment they were using a series of electrometer detections, gravitational detections, a bunch of field to detect for changes in electrical field gradients. So they killed an animal. Hey, did the electrical field gradient, did it change? Did the energy levels change? Right. At the loss of life. Now, the loss of life means more than one thing. You're talking about at a cellular level, at a spiritual level, right? In terms of its harmony with the frequencies of everything around it. Okay, so it's multidimensional, but our technology is only looking at a piece of it, and each time we get better, we're looking at more. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's what's interesting is the animal was submitted into a metal box, so the classical transverse electromagnetic waves, the Hertz waves, could be screened only, and they were only looking at longitudinal electromagnetic waves. Get this, he called it the Tesla wave. He already knew that.
Right.
So this guy back in the, he started in the 70s, I think, 60s, 70s, doing this research. He started publishing in the 80s when he started to look at this stuff, can penetrate the screen. So basically what he's saying is human life also has these things occurring. Now, I don't know if you recall when I did, God knows, at least 9 months ago, I did one, we were talking about technology where you're doing imaging and then a person would get up and they'd leave and there was still that energy.
Oh, yeah, that was cool. Right. Yeah.
What that is that's showing this. It's just a different way of measuring it, but it exists, right? So, all right, what does this mean, guys? So, what he did in terms of energy was he created a gap in his electrical current system. And I'm gonna, I know when you look at this, guys, you can read the article. It's really detailed, but there's two things that I just want to point out about this thing here. R1 is a load consisting of 5 lamps. So basically what he did is he took a series of lamps, put them in a row, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Put them in a row, put a current through them. But then what he did is he also put a series of currents through like a spark plug, right? C1, there's a gap. It's a spark plug. But what he saw was an excess of energy, not the same amount. And the first one in a closed system, and my system, it's the same uniform amount, right? Classic laws of physics. But what he did is he created a gap. But what he did create is an excess of energy. So zero resistance. So he was able to increase energy. And by the way, this technology and this theory is being utilized. And let me show you something really cool. Here's just one example of what I'm trying to show you. This is a reproduced version of his work itself. And this was able to create excess energy. And basically what you see here is basically what this is, by the way, this is higher technology. This is single tungsten electrode spark plugs, high-end spark plugs, right? With a gap of 2 to 3 millimeters. But you send a current through there, a very small amount, you go up exponentially. Now, what's really kind of cool about this is, okay, well, like, what does that mean? All you've been able to do is increase electricity. What are you going to do with it? Where are you going to go with it? So let's look at the next, 15 minutes. He also, though, like I said, was the medical research will also go in this direction. Before I do my quick jump here, right? He's talking about this, and we talk about this. Remember, you were talking about the torsional fields?
Yes.
You were just talking about it earlier. You asked me the question. His peer developed a concept of global energy and information field on our planet that was named noosphere. Now, ether, noosphere, everybody, no matter what country you're in, they all talk about this. I've talked about this a million times about this global energy and this energy field that's around us, right? Now we're just starting to understand it. But what they've done now is they've taken these energy fields and say, hey, this is directly proportional and directly affects biological objects, meaning any living organism, right? This is huge. This is huge because this will completely take the medical community as we're going into that process flow that I showed you in my diagram. This will hurdle us into fourth dimensional thinking. Boom. It's like really fast, like my car. Okay, just boom, we're there. So now he's talking about fourth dimensional views to consider three-dimensional world systems and the densities of energy. This is where we're going with this, and it's really exciting. But let's go back. Let's take a step back now to say, okay, Mike, we understand now that we can create energy, and there is the concept of free energy does exist.